I've been thinking about retirement lately, which is a little ironic because I just started working again. I work 3 days a week now, which means 4 days a week are largely mine. And the more I settle into this schedule, the more I realize that what feels different is not simply just having, 4 days off. Work still exists in my life. It's just not the center of my life anymore. And that's what makes it feel very different. Financially, obviously, I'm not retired. I still work. I still have bills and responsibilities. I'm still building my business, Brenix, and investing in that business. But compared to the pace I've lived at for most of my life, I kind of feel retired. And that is what made me wonder, what if retirement isn't only an age or a point when you stop receiving a paycheck? What if retirement can also be a stage of life? Because when I look back, I have been responsible for something or somebody for most of my life. And at first I was going to say since I became an adult, but that wouldn't even be true. For me, responsibility started much earlier. Becoming an adult just added more layers to that. There was work, motherhood, relationships, a household, meals, laundry, appointments, errands, schedules. And for years, I was also the family chauffeur. Somebody always needed to get somewhere, and I needed to make sure that they got there. When my youngest son got his license, I was finally able to officially retire from that position. And trust me, I was happy to turn in those keys. And of course, I still have responsibilities. I still cook, I still clean, I do laundry. I handle all the regular things that come with being an adult. But the difference is I'm mostly doing those things for myself now. There isn't a partner waiting for me to do something. My children don't need to be fed or transported, managed, or scheduled, the way they once did. If dinner can wait, dinner can wait. If I want to spend the afternoon doing something else, most of the time I can. The chores don't disappear. The demand attached to them is what did. And I don't think I fully understood how much space those type of things took up in my life until that demand was gone. What I have now that I didn't have then was autonomy. I can decide what I want to do with much more of my own time without constantly arranging my life around what somebody else needs. And maybe that is part of retirement too. We usually just talk about retirement as one big event. You work for decades, eventually you leave your job, and then finally your time belongs to you. But maybe there's a smaller retirement that happened along the way. Maybe you retire from certain family roles. You retire from being everybody's chauffeur. You retire from being on call all the time. You retire from climbing a career ladder and you no longer care about climbing. Maybe you even retire from the idea that work has to sit at the center of your life. And that doesn't make traditional retirement any less real. I still hope to reach the point where working for money is completely optional. But maybe financial retirement doesn't have to be the first time we experience this kind of freedom. Because for me, one of the biggest changes in this stage of my life is that I still work, but my life is not organized around that work. When I'm at work, I take my job very seriously, but I also take my business seriously, and I believe in what I'm building, and I'm still investing my time, energy, and money into that. But I don't want to leave one demanding work life just to create another one for myself. I don't want 7 days of self-employment. that would completely miss the whole point of this point of my life, or this stage. This stage is really about investing in myself, and sometimes that does mean working on my business, but sometimes it means taking care of my home, creating something, going somewhere, working in my garden, which I was actually doing this morning, focusing on my health, trying something simply because it interests me. And sometimes it means doing absolutely nothing important. I'm learning that I don't need to justify every hour of my life. And that can be difficult because I spent most of my life being quote unquote productive. And when you give a productive person an open day, we will find a way to turn it into another assignment, another project, another goal, another way to prove we used the day well. And I'm not trying to do that anymore. I have things that I want to build, and I do have goals, and I'm not finished doing meaningful work as a whole. But I also want to enjoy the space that I worked so hard to finally have. Having 4 days of the week largely belong to me has changed the way my whole week feels. Those aren't vacation. They are PTO. They aren't a few hours I managed to squeeze in after somebody else had what they needed. They're simply my life. Now, there are trade-offs. Working 3 days a week means I have to make different financial choices. There are things I may need to spend less on, and there are lifestyle adjustments that come with earning less. But in return, I'm getting something I value much more, something that money can't buy and that you can never ever get more of, and that's time. Not someday, but I have right now. And maybe that's what's changed the most for me. You know, when we're younger, growth is usually presented as adding things to your life. More responsibility, more money, more achievement, more people depending on you. But I'm starting to think there's another kind of growth that happens later. Sometimes growth looks like subtraction. Less urgency, less obligation, less of your life being arranged around somebody else, and more choice about what you actually want your day to look like. And that doesn't feel like withdrawing for life, and it's not withdrawing for life for me. It feels like finally having more room to live it on my terms. So, no, I'm not retired in the traditional sense. I still work, I have goals, I run a business, I'm still building things. But compared with the pace I lived at for so many years, something has absolutely changed. Maybe retirement really can be a life stage and not just an age. Because I don't feel retired from life. I think I'm retired from being on duty all the time. And trust me, that feels wonderful.